And okay, hi, sorry. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. My name is Jessica Corvo. Thank you so much for the invitation to join and share my survivor story with everybody. I am absolutely delighted to be here and just tickled to be surrounded by so many people that are contributing in positive and powerful ways for the greater good of humanity. So thank you so much. My name is Jessica Corvo, and I am a survivor of trauma, specifically gun violence. The gun violence, or the person holding the gun, was my father. And so being able to understand all the different dynamics of what happens when the person that you, well, the people that you're born into, what happens when you're trained to think that you can trust them, and when they betray a trust so great as threatening your life. How do you come to terms with that? How do you even understand the difference between multiple realities? How do you understand the depth and the complexities of mental health? How do you find labels on different types of things? I'm not certified for any of that. You know, mine is based on experience, not reading materials, but just it's a little bit more difficult, in my opinion, when you're in the middle of it because you uh, don't necessarily have a sturdy ground underneath you. I think that when you're moving around the world and you're seeing things from different perspectives, it's also very interesting because it allows you to challenge your own set of beliefs and what you've been conditioned or otherwise told to accept. So I think all these different things that were kind of swirling around at the same time, and then again also a lot of it was escalating. So it started with approximately 10 to 11 years of grooming, conditioning, and getting me to believe certain things. And then it went physical with strangulation in 2004, and then escalated to gun violence in 2009. So that's like a little bit of the background on the violence side of things. On the other side, it made it very confusing because my parents, both of my parents, a Chinese mother and Italian father, they showed up to every single event that I had. I played the violin all the way through graduation for high school. I was a 3-sport athlete, cross country, indoor track, and outdoor track. I was on the dean's list, homecoming court. I mean, you name it, we were involved with everything. Yearbook committee, different cultural groups, the Asian society in college, and a very talented athlete. So I was always part of varsity teams. So every time that we had an event, both my parents were there, including my father. So having that duality of people that are showing up, but then also what's happening behind closed doors is very difficult to try to come to terms with. So I think that in context of mental health and this entire online conference, I am just so tickled to be able to share my journey and also a lot of my, I guess, learnings from the entire thing. So on an individual basis, I think it is extremely difficult to talk about mental health because it's invisible. So how do you quantify different things? You tell people that you're not feeling well, you tell people that you're having a little bit of an off day. A lot of times in the US context, they force you to put on a smile, put on your big girl panties, just power through. And we have toxic positivity. It's not that bad of a deal. There's a lot of gaslighting. There's a lot of dismissing. It's a lot of teaching you how to betray yourself. And you can't get upset about it because you don't know, you're ignorant. You don't understand that that is not good for you. You just know that you're not feeling something that is in alignment with what you know that your truth is versus what the truth is for everything else. So for a long time, 10 years, I've seen 4 different mental health specialists, and every single person told me that there was nothing wrong with me. I was having normal human responses to abnormal human behavior. Tried going to family therapists, but kind of difficult to get any diagnosis when your family doesn't show up or doesn't join you. So I was very fortunate that I was able to have a couple physical, I guess, events that allowed me to be able to discern whether or not I was losing my mind or whether or not I was actually going through this entire survivor journey. And to oversimplify, I would like to say that in 5 steps. So the first step would be accept the challenge. 2 would be understand. 3 would be purify. 4 would be let go. It's inclusive of forgiveness. And then number 5 would be to expand. Now I'm going to touch back on those a couple different times throughout the discussion. So in terms of accept the challenge, what does that mean? For me, I realized that I was struggling with a couple of my interpersonal relationships. I had healthy, well, what I thought was healthy romantic relationships in high school and college, and expanding in 3 years, 4 years for both of those time periods. Then I didn't date for a very long time because I focused on my career. Then when I started dating, I noticed a common thread that the men that I was dating and the men that I was entertaining were not healthy for me. So I decided to step back, reflect on why was I making all these decisions, again, with the help of therapists as well. And it was, let's look into some of the stuff that was happening with your family. And because those are the most informative first relationships that you have with your mother and your father. And being able to, I was in denial for a very long time. That's not abuse. That's not, what, I'm not one of those because I was strong. I was a corporate person. I was an Iron Man. All these different things, these labels in my head. And I didn't want to understand it. I didn't want to deal with it. And I didn't think that was me. Then finally, by being able to accept the challenge, I was able to heal through it, because everyone says awareness before change, right? You can't heal what you don't feel. So my entire life is slogans, by the way. And so being able to accept, hey, maybe I'm not a victim, but I was victimized. I was a target. That helped me for that warrior mindset of always needing to be strong. So being able to reframe it and get through it was one of my secrets to, I guess, being able to move through. So I accepted the challenge. I'm like, okay, if this is what happened, now that I understand that, how do I get through it? And there is no roadmap. Everyone's journey is completely different. So the next step for me was to understand the different dynamics. Am I dealing with my own mental health or lack of health? Am I dealing with other people that are not as healthy? Am I dealing with generational trauma? What does it mean to do inner child work? What does it mean to do reparenting? What does it mean to be aligned? Dr. Pawan had mentioned about the mind-body connection. For me, I thought that my mind was always very tough because of my physical things of being able to do. Learning to play the violin, one of the most difficult instruments in the entire world. Learning how to cross finish lines at a fairly decent level. Being, the top, I think it's the top 1% of the world if you can run a 400 under 60 seconds. And I was running 57 second 400s all through college. So being able to, thank you. So being able to do these things on a physical component and understanding the mind-body connection, that you can only achieve those physical attributes by having a strong mind, strong determination, right? So, and also being able to accomplish Ironman in 12 hours. The first time doing it, that's not easy. It takes a lot of mental tenacity and mental clarity in order to be able to do that, and a lot of consistency. So from a body perspective, I was able to think and quantify, I'm okay, I'm healthy. From a mental perspective, the different mental health professionals that I'd gone to, nobody gave me any labels. So how do you know how to fix something if you're not being told what's wrong with you? So it was a very confusing time for me when you're trying to understand all these different dynamics. And so from there, I leaned into meditation, and literally as simple as observing the body to master the mind. So if I was operating in autopilot, and if things were just coming together somewhat ease because of my already connectedness or oneness, if you will, then I wanted to understand it. I don't want to be an autopilot anymore. I want to be able to understand why I'm feeling different things. I don't want to dissociate from my emotions. I don't want to believe that emotions are just messengers. I want to be able to hold space for those hard days and those sad days. I don't want to, if I turn to somebody and say I'm having a bad day, I don't want to have to wipe my tears, tighten my ponytail, and be like, okay, brush it off, let's go. I want to be able to sit in that moment for at least just a minute, maybe two, and be normal. And so part of that was purifying, making sure that my heart didn't have any, hatred or resentment or animosity or pain. I mean, I recognize that sometimes I was a little bit angry, and I was able to identify through the help of others as well that a lot of times anger is a primary emotion and pain would be a secondary emotion. So what's the difference between that? It's a feeling of safety. So when I'm angry, it's because I don't feel safe in my surroundings. Is it because I don't trust the people that I'm with, or is it because I don't trust myself? So these are all very powerful questions that I had to continue to ask myself during my purification process. And through that, I was doing Vipassana. I know that I'm mispronouncing it, but that was the meditation that I did. And the first 10-day silence retreat, I thought I was going crazy. And it was on the third day that I was convinced that I was hallucinating. And I could hear ants marching, and I could hear the leaves singing to me, and the whistle blowing was an orchestra, and all these different things. And I wasn't losing my mind as much as I was just quiet, making my mind a little bit more quiet by observing it, not having so much attachment, and then being able to be fully immersed in the present moment. And that was wild for me because I didn't realize on how many distractions I had filled my life with. So here I thought I'm actively processing different things and I am in tune, but really I was doing distractions. So I didn't want to deal with my family, so I became an achiever. I didn't want to deal with the pain, so I started doing things to people please, to try to earn their affection and their accolades and everything. So a lot of the purification process was learning how to look in the mirror and decide, I don't care if other people like me. Do I like myself? Am I proud of myself? How do I feel about myself? And then being able to just go from there. How do I feel about my heart? Am I doing things from a place of good intention? Am I doing things because I genuinely want to do it? Or am I doing it because I want people to think a certain way because of me? So, and that was tough. I mean, that took a few years to be able to kind of go through that entire process. And then let go and forgiveness would be the fourth step for me. It's being able to understand in context generational trauma. My grandparents did the best that they could, given they were the first generation to come to migrate to the U.S., dealing with all the different things associated with being immigrants, and maybe not having a whole lot of money, and definitely not having a community, and being able to navigate through that, and then having compassion for that, and just understanding and forgiveness. Next level would be having forgiveness for my parents, being first generation in the US, all the different things associated with that, the complexity of what culture do you stay attached to, the culture of your parents or the culture of your surroundings. So the Italian or the American, or the Chinese and the American respectively for my parents. And then also having forgiveness for myself, understanding the victim mentality versus the target mentality, the survivor mentality. How did I want to frame myself? Why did I want to frame myself? What are the different labels that I was having with all of that? How can I quantify, the purity of my heart or the forgiveness of my heart? Do I still have any of those? Maybe I wouldn't even say flashbacks, because the only time that I really experienced any panic attacks would be through when I first came back to Chicago, and the first time that we had the 4th of July, and I could not tell the difference between the fireworks and the firecrackers versus guns. And my mental health professionals don't necessarily consider that a flashback, because for my trauma, the trigger was never pulled. So that could have been a story that I was spinning in my head in terms of the trauma associated with gun violence, with a physical gun being put against my face versus the shot of the gun, which I was having a little bit of a panic attack years later. So again, a lot of different complexities with all of that, but it's also forgiving myself on allowing myself within situations, prioritizing the desire to be embraced by others versus the desire and need to embrace myself. And 3.6 million words, I actually got acknowledged as being one of the top 6,000 humanitarians, specifically for my work in the recovery space. And I ended up launching a program called Be Your Own Hero. So I help and facilitate workshops for a lot of teenagers in the Chicago area as part of my continued, connectedness and giving back. Because for me, I think a lot of times by helping, once you do your own work, your continued wellness is also by helping others. You're being able to stay connected. You're accepting the fact that your soul has picked this beautiful blessing of experience, and what you learn, it's almost not just an honor, but a privilege and a responsibility to help others through their journey. And so a lot of that was only able to be accomplished through my own personal forgiveness. And again, being able to accept it, I did the best that I could given the tools that I had. And thankfully now I have even more tools, and I know how to sit with myself. And the last one is just to expand. So recapping, once you accept the challenge and you're like, okay, I accept, let's go through it. Understand what are the different dynamics, what can I control, what can I not control, what can I move through. Purify. Now that I understand all the different things, how is my heart feeling, how is my mind feeling, how is my body feeling, being able to purify and make sure that everything is kind of going through in a constructive way rather than a destructive way. Be aware of all the different cycles that are happening, and then just take it one thing at a time. It's all you can do, one thing at a time. Let go of any of the assumptions, the conditioning, the outside external noise. There's so much external noise. I was reading a study where we get judged at least 100 times before we even step out of the house. If you're someone that listens to the news, all the advertisements telling you that you're not good enough and that you're not pretty enough, you're not skinny enough, that all these different things, it can be a bit much for a lot of people. So let go of all the assumptions of society, and also any of the labels that I had for myself. And then the last part is to expand. So it's very difficult to expand and operate from a place of integrity and a place of love if you don't do the previous steps, because you have a little bit of heaviness, or you have a lot of, I guess, part of being human, but you have a lot of complexities that might prevent you from a mind and a heart place from being able to go forward. So being a resilience, what I classify as a resilience expert, it's understanding when I'm going into coping mechanisms, distraction, easiest thing for me is to just agitate myself, be able to say, all right, I'm increasing my stress, and now I'm able to focus because I shut down my emotions. It's very easy for me to be able to do that and then accomplish a goal, because in my mind, I can redefine my emotions as indicators or messages on how, or fuel even, on how to get through something. It doesn't mean I don't feel it. It means that I don't accept it for what it could be. And so I don't like doing that. It's easy, but I don't like doing that anymore. So for me, I feel better about myself when I stay connected to my heart. So to me, that means oversimplification. If I'm having a good day, I'm having a good day and I'm able to flow with it. If I'm having a bad day, I need to be honest about my limitations and then withdraw a little bit, saying, today's difficult for me. Can we please loop back and maybe we can start again tomorrow? And that's something I wasn't able to do in my up until maybe 32 years old. I was never able to admit that I was having a difficult day, because to me, difficult day was a weakness. And now it's a strength with being able to articulate that, specifically because with my reframing, it means that I have to accept radical truth on the people that I'm surrounded with. Are they accepting me for my difficult days and also my powerful days? Or are they only wanting me to continue to achieve and perhaps earn their time, earn their respect, or earn their presence? And so from a bird's eye view, it's constantly being able to evaluate first myself and then to my surroundings. And then from a very internal perspective, it's making sure that I'm checking in with myself. How do I check in with myself? How am I feeling in the morning? How am I feeling throughout the day? Literally asking, Jess, how are you feeling today? Being on a deeper level, if different emotions are cropping up. Hey, 8-year-old Jess, how are we feeling today? What do you need right now? How can I help you? From a physical perspective, checking in with where's my body feeling a little bit of stress? Am I doing all my workouts? Am I continuing to get the movement in? If maybe my body feels a little bit stiff, can I go for a walk outside? We're still in world 2.0, so I do a lot of workouts inside. And it's a very big difference when you're outside working out versus when you're inside working out. So I think, and from an emotional perspective, it's being able to have those conversations with people that have caused me great harm and even threatened my life, and being able to be constructive with, I'm sorry that you're maybe not well, or not trying to be judgmental. I'm sorry that things are the way that they are. This is what I require in order to have a healthy dialogue. And keep my fingers crossed. If they're willing to show up, then they're willing to show up. And if they're not, then I just have to be patient and unconditional and just say, okay, it's not our time yet, but I have faith that our time will come. And I think that is a massive, massive part in the survivor journey, with being able to accept that people are operating the best that they can, and to not have that judgment on what you need and whether or not they're offering that. Because who are we to judge? Who are we to be able to say, why are you not treating me in a certain way? I mean, years ago I was in that space, but now it's just, that's okay. This is what I need. If you can't offer that, that's acceptable. I can offer it to myself. At the same time, I don't need to be present in a situation that is not healthy for me, or what I classify as healthy for me. So I think even in context of today, I get a lot of pushback. I get a lot of being a survivor and being open about it. I get a lot of people that will question, Jess, are you sure that you're having a normal, human response to this, or are you predisposed, and so maybe you're looking for that? Once you're a whistleblower, you have to constantly evaluate, am I having a response or a reaction? Are the words, and is what I'm sharing, and is my experience legitimate to what I'm actually experiencing? Is my reality flawed? It's a constant thing, but I think being able to live in 4 different countries. I've lived in Singapore for 6 years, Hong Kong for 4 years, China for 1 year, Indonesia for 6 months, and then over 20 years in the US. Those have given me the tools to be able to constantly evaluate and see my life and my perspective from multiple, I guess, realities. And so I think hopefully that kind of makes sense for everybody that might be embarking a survivor journey, whether it's conscious, subconscious, public, not public. We all experience some kind of trauma in our life. We're not, you're not alone. There's plenty of people that are talking about it and sharing it. There is, most importantly, there is no one roadmap for everybody. It's just turning in and constantly checking within and seeing on how you're feeling and then navigating. And as far as I'm concerned, my personal journey, hopefully it can help you guys, was being able to accept the challenge, which just is radical truth, what's happening, understand all the different layers and dynamics, and then being able to purify, quantify it. How is your head? How is your heart? Make sure everything's coming from a place of innocence. Think of yourself as a child. You don't have any conditioning when you're a child. Everything is just pure joy. And it's not happiness. Happiness is very different than joy. So make sure you come from a place of joy, which is, in my opinion, the purity aspect of it. Be able to let go of assumptions, let go of expectations, let go of any kind of heaviness that you might be holding on to, and then just expand. And so right now I'm in a part of my chapter is expanding. So it's just doing more of everything. I've done my own inner work. I've been able to do a lot of collaborations. I'm currently doing a 21-day reboot with a celebrity personal trainer. I have a lot of different collaborations coming on throughout the year, for resilience workshops, for different reboots, for different connections, for the mind and body, spiritual alignment, getting in touch with your inner child. There's so many magical things that are happening throughout the year, including with a whole bunch of corporate programs. So if anyone wants to, join any of those, I will be sure to share all of those details. And I would like to open up the floor to any questions if you guys wanted to ask anything.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, congratulations for a very wonderful, resilient journey. My question is on anger management and on your spiritual journey. As you said, you are doing meditation, you quoted Mahatma Gandhi,
Mhm.
who loved the latest Bible scriptures area called Bhagavad Gita.
Mm-hmm.
The third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to his disciple Arjuna, Tam Esha Krodha Esha Rajo Guna Samudhava Mahashano Mahapapma Vitti Enam Ihavara. This is in Sanskrit. I'll just give a brief. Oh, my dear son, the most difficult thing is to control your mind, and its kamam is lust and krodham is anger.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are able to control your mind, anger and lust, you will be in a situation which is a blissful situation, which you call joy.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is related to how you have done your anger management after whatever has happened.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to repeat that instance you have gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
What was your recipe, and what is your way forward? And which city you are in the United States?
Okay, we'll start with the easiest question. I'm in Chicago. A little bit deeper in terms of anger management, it's a very good question. It's a very valid question. I think if we take a step back and we define anger and we define on how we're harming ourselves and also harming others, based on my conditioning and based on trying to get the approval of a lot of other people, my anger was never acting out and causing harm to other people that I was aware of. So that means my anger was internally twisted into people pleasing and into accomplishments. So it means that I was angry and I was hurt and I was frustrated and I was confused on what was happening with the dynamic between me and my father. But rather than shout at him or rather than criticize or rather than judge him, I, in my mind and in my heart, found ways, how can I solve the problem? I focused on what is the problem between us, and rather than view his aspect or his part of the situation, I was able to look internally, what can I do to fix it? And at that time, I was still in a place of not accepting situations for what they were and just kind of flowing with it. I was still coming from ego, and coming from ego, what can I fix? What can I do? I can be perfect. I can accomplish. I can, be the perfect daughter. I can accomplish the Iron Man. And that was actually, in terms of timelines, the strangulation was in 2004. The gun violence was 2009. Accepting different things. I moved overseas in 2006. So I was dipping in and out in terms of physical location, which made it easier for me. Ironman was 2006. I broke my silence about everything in 2017. So 2017 was when I started being open about it. And from an anger management perspective, people could very easily judge my journey and say that's when I had the social outbursts for anger, because that's when I started sharing it. However, internally, when I was going through all those different things, my anger management tools were crossing an Ironman finish line in 12 hours. My way to deal with the domestic violence was asking my father if he could be my coach through the Ironman journey, to give us a structure, to give us an opportunity to mend our relationship. And so I think I'm very blessed because my family gave me the tools to always question structures, and they gave me the tools to always do what you can. I mean, that's the serenity prayer, right? So understand, control what you can, let go of what you can't, and have the wisdom to know the difference. So if my core belief system was based on that, I am a strong person outside, but I was a very insecure person inside. So I wouldn't act out and cause harm to other people, but I would very, very easily be causing harm to myself. Does that answer your question, Dr. Pawan?
I think he's coping with some.
Oh, well, I hope that answers the question, because I think that, again, in the US context of anger management, people think, in my personal opinion, people think that it is bad to experience anger. I do not think that it's bad to experience anger. I think that when we get in trouble when we act out on that anger. So a lot of times people are, not being able to hold space for themselves. So I was at risk for lashing out when I didn't feel safe or comfortable holding the heavier emotions. And so for me, when I had those heavy emotions, I didn't lean on other people. Up until 33 years old, there's only 5 people in the whole world that ever saw me cry. I used to wear that as a badge of honor. That's terrible. That's sad. That's really disheartening to hear something like that. But for years I thought, I'm okay. Everything is fine. Everybody asked me, how's your day? Perfect. My world was falling apart and I didn't have the strength to talk about it. And it wasn't until later that I learned how to hold space for myself and then be able to have those conversations with other people. So a lot of it is doing the inside work and realizing that a lot of the anger management is learning how to not hurt yourself. Do you have any other questions?
You also sublimated your anger. You converted your anger, socially unacceptable emotion, frowned upon, converted it to socially acceptable.
Yeah.
That's sublimation. Sublimated your anger, then it didn't work anymore. And you had to confront it, you had to express it. It was growing in there.
Yeah.
As you were sublimating it, it was growing in there.
Yeah.
That's Freud's observation. These repressed emotions, they come with energy, and this energy tends to build up. It's pent up one day.
Absolutely. And I think that's why I thought a lot of emotions were fuel. So for a very long time, I thought, coming from ego, I thought it's okay, I'm processing all of this. If I'm feeling angry, then I go for a run. And in my mind, I thought, I'm not suppressing it because I'm releasing it. I'm using it. But then as I continued my recovery journey, just as you say, I wasn't. I was releasing the top level, but I didn't do that deep dive. And it wasn't until I fell into meditation and really was able to understand how my mind was working and on how strong my ego was in order to protect me, and to know that I wasn't operating as a human, I was operating as a machine because I was only accepting certain things into my world. And now it's a completely different game. I mean, not that life is a game, but it kind of is. You just understand that there's so many different parts to it.
It's wonderful that you had converted it into helping others. But it's a very typical reaction to anger and hurt. The schizoid reaction is very typical. One of the main elements of a schizoid reaction is actually withdrawal and avoidance, also of the emotions themselves, denial of the emotions, depression, converting the sublimation, converting and so on and so forth. You undergone through a period of not being.
Absolutely.
Not acknowledging your emotions is not being. You've gone through a period of absence.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of it is also based on your conditioning, right? Because how do you know how to embrace your emotions if your structure hasn't been taught that? So from a Chinese structure, as an example, you have a poker face. You don't show any of your emotions. You're not expressive. And then because it's not, you don't want to be an embarrassment. Like that's the framing. I'm not saying it's healthy, but I'm saying that was the framing. On the other side, with my father, you have the Italian side who's extremely expressive. So you don't necessarily understand that those are emotions that are coming out, because that's just your father. That's just how he expresses himself. You don't have those tools growing up to know, oh, dad's experiencing anger. Oh, dad's experiencing excitement. Oh, dad's experiencing all this. So if you don't have those tools to really understand what are the emotions and what are all the things that people are experiencing, it becomes very complicated and very complex to work through all of that. And I think for me, the easiest way to kind of understand, if you want to dive into codependency or enmeshment, which is a big problems that we have in the US. When I first started debating on doing the workshops, I had to have a very big awareness on what was my role within, how was I able to show up for other people, at what point was I still trying to ease the suffering and of all the girls that were in the space. So my first workshop had 45 girls. First workshop had 45 girls. I was it was just on the tail end of the heaviest part of doing all of my healing, or I mean the growth and awakening, I guess, if you will. And that first time I was terrified. I walked into this room with the intention to try to just share my story, and if I could help, then I could help, and if I couldn't, at least I tried. And what I was in, from an ego perspective, stay in your lane, just share your story, and that's it. Answer the questions, that's it. If they ask you for help, how are you going to handle that? From a heart perspective, am I offering to help because I haven't helped myself? Am I feeling a need to help these teenage girls that are suffering anything from sexual violence, physical violence, mental, emotional? Or am I, you know, being able to properly hold that space for them? Am I able to offer them some kind of tools? And so it's very, I agree with you 100%. It's very much staying in touch with how I'm feeling throughout the entire workshop, and then taking all those best practices and just continuing to fine tune. And my goodness, when a 14-year-old comes up to you and asks you after you share your story and says, is your father still living? And you're like, and you acknowledge, of course. And they come back because these are gang violence people, right? And they turn to gangs because of their own personal stories of violence. And they came to because they needed a sense of family. And so when they came up to me, and now the entire room has bonded over their trauma, shared trauma, right? And then they come up to me saying, if you ever want to change that, we'll take care of it for you. I remember being so confused because I'm thinking, like, on one level, they've just brought me into their world and I've connected with them at a heart space where they want to protect me. On another level, I failed as somebody who's gone through their own healing journey, because if they took away violence as a solution, that's not what I was trying to promote. And then at a deeper level, it was, what is the reality of my assumption of what I was hoping these teenagers to respond with, versus, is my judgment pure? You know, take away that judgment and just accept that this was their love language, or this was their way to connect. And so in my first workshop, all those different things that were happening and being able to stay connected, I feel was extremely powerful, because what was acted on, what was experienced versus what was acting on, can very easily always be different things. And so I just gave her a big hug, and I just said, you know, you're not alone. We have a new group of 45 girls, 46 including me, of a new family. It's heartbreaking that what we're bonding over, but just know that no matter what, there's always an option, and you always have a choice. And then I left it at that. We took a picture. They followed me on social media for a little bit, and a couple of them started their own, you know, nonprofits. So one of them is related around dancing. They like K-pop, so now they do K-pop, and they teach that to other people. So I mean, I think that it is a constant, you know, journey. The more we think we know, the less we actually know, right? And then the more we accept that we don't know a whole lot, it opens our mind to be able to expand and say, teach me something. Okay. I try my best to show up in all situations with, this is what I feel that I'm really strong with. At the same time, teach me what I might be missing. And that perspective has been able to, I think, facilitate very strong partnerships and collaborations and continued growth.
It's great to hear.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica. The presentation is not only the emotional, but also very, very powerful presentation. The presentation you gave was that I will never forget. I can't thank you enough for that. And also, definitely, you did a great job connecting with the audience during this keynote address, and you really did really have a great public speaker. You were really a great public speaker, and thanks for the job done with 100% perfection.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the opportunity. We're stronger together. Enjoy everyone's day.
Now we'd like to invite Dr. Sam Hackney. Dr. Sam Hackney, he's the visiting professor of psychology, Southern Federal University, Rostov-on-Don, Russia, and the professor of finance and psychology in Central for International Advance and Professional Studies. He already spent the